Gadgetzan, the city of opportunity.
Hello friends and welcome back to another Hearthstone card set review for the mean streets of Gadgetzan. Today we're talking about the Grimy Goons, one of the three tri-class gangs that rule the streets of Gadgetzan, and their core mechanic is the Grime Street Hold mechanic as it's been coined, and what that's all about is playing minions that are slightly understated but then buff other cards that you're holding in your hand so you gain that tempo back plus more later. And the three classes are the Hunter, the Paladin and the Warrior. So those three classes are all going to sort of work around this core mechanic. The easiest way to show it off is with the three cross-class cards. So these three cards can be used by any of those three classes, the Hunter, the Paladin or the Warrior. First one is the common Grime Street Smuggler, 3 mana, 2/4, battle cry, give a random minion in your hand, +1/+1. So as you can see, probably about one stat less than you'd expect as a 3 mana card, but you get 2 stats on another card in your hand for later. So you're making that tempo back and a little bit more. And, you know, not a particularly exciting card, but it's a good example of how the format works, how this mechanic works, and it might see some play in decks that are already doing that kind of thing. Certainly a good starter card if maybe you're missing a few cards, and in Arena it's okay. It's probably good enough to see some play at least. The rare card, the Grime Street Informant, this is a common sort of theme for the rare cards in the cross-class sets, is a Grime Street Informant, 2 mana, 1/1, battle cry, discover a Hunter, Paladin or Warrior card. So you're going to get one of each. You're going to get 1 Hunter, 1 Paladin and 1 Warrior card to pick from. And that's really interesting. 2 mana, 1/1 discover is good enough. You know, Jeweled Scarab saw some play and in Arena was decent. And in Arena, Discover's always going to be okay because you're already kind of discovering your deck to start with the way you draft. So Discover cards are actually a little bit better than they are in a constructed game where you're hand picking your deck. So will this be good? Probably not good enough in constructed, I don't think. Now the fact that it's cheap is probably going to make it better than a more expensive one, as we'll talk about when we talk about the other classes and their cross-class cards. But the problem is you could get one of the really bad cards. There's loads of bad cards in all 3 of these classes, in all 9 of the Hearthstone classes. You might just get some bad cards across the board. Also, you might just get cards that don't synergize at all with your deck. That said, when you do get some weird, interesting combos, it's going to make for some fun moments. So that's going to be worth seeing at least, but I don't think Grime Street Informant will see a ton of play. Finally, Don Huncho, the legendary for the cross-class Grime Street Grimy Goons. 7 mana, 5/6, battle cry, give a random minion in your hand, +5/+5. That's 10, 11 of stats, so 21 total stats for 7 mana. And if you buff Don Huncho up beforehand with other Grime Street Hold stuff, then he could be a 7 mana 7/8 that gives you +5/+5 on a minion. Now on general minions, the +5/+5 is nice, it's a good amount of stats, but is it good enough to warrant the cost you're paying for Don Huncho? It's tough to say. Where it's going to be interesting is, as we see as we go through the classes, there's quite a few cards that get benefits based on how much they've already been buffed in your hand. And those cards, when hit by Don Huncho, are going to be huge. So, on the grounds of that, as we'll see when we get into the other classes, I think Don Huncho could absolutely see some play in a Grimy Goons deck. So, well worth bearing in mind as we move forward. And let's move forward now into the first of the 3 classes, the Hunter. Okay, so we start with Alley Cat, 1 mana, 1/1 beast, battle cry, summon a 1/1 cat. It doesn't specify if the cat's a beast, but I think it would be reasonable to assume that it might well be. I mean, it's a cat. It probably will also be a beast. 1 mana for 2/2 of stats is decent, and certainly if they're both beasts. Hunter aggro might see play. If it does, I think this will work well. Also, as a 1 mana beast, it does work as a enabler for other beast cards. So if Beast Hunter is a thing, then it might see play. Alley Cat's decent enough as it is. I think this is good enough as a 1-drop for your Hunter, and I think in Arena you'll definitely pick it. So be prepared to see lots of this adorable fella, and thankfully he is absolutely lovable. Look at those golden teeth. What a cutie. Smuggler's Crate, 1 mana, give a random beast in your hand +2/+2. So again, pushing the beast synergy and using that Grimy Goons mechanic in a fun way. Is playing a card and using a 1 mana for buffing up a card in your hand, good. The problem with buffing a card in your hand is kind of like buffing a minion the turn you play it on the board, which is that you don't get to use the buff until next turn, and it might be dead by then. That said, when you're combining it with these Grime Street cards that are all about buffing cards in your hand, it might be good enough to work. I don't think this is a great use of your 1 mana, but perhaps there's a viability to it. 1 mana is kind of throwaway. If you're playing a very aggressive deck, this could be good enough. The fact that it doesn't replace itself, you know, I think you'd be better off playing the 2/2 draw a card of Druid. I think that's a better option for your money or for your card value. 3 mana Shaky Zip Gunner. 3 mana Death Rattle. Give a random minion in your hand +2/+2. 3 mana 3/3 is good, and it gives a random minion in your hand +2/+2. Now it is a Death Rattle, so you play it and then it has to die and then you get the buff. But this is 5/5 of stats for 3 mana. This is a really good card, and it goes on anything. It doesn't care if it's a beast or not. It's going to buff something up. You're going to be pretty happy with how it works. You're not losing a ton of tempo. You're only losing 1 stat and you're getting 3 back. I think that's pretty good. It's not so much that the enemy's going to want to waste a silence on it, and if they do, then I'm sure your Savannah Highmanes will be very happy. But yeah, I think this card is good and will absolutely see some play in the Hunter Grimy Goons style decks, and maybe even in non-Grimy Goons style deck, and in Arena, definitely a card you can pick in Hunter. Hidden Cache. 2 mana Secret. After your opponent plays a minion, give a random minion in your hand +2/+2. So, kind of like the Smuggler's Crate, except this is 2 mana and it's a secret. Now, and it also doesn't need to hit a beast. It can kind of hit anything. Now, the interesting thing about this is your opponent doesn't know what it's done. They play something and the secret triggers. They presumably know it's Hidden Cache because it hasn't done anything else, but they don't know where it's gone. They don't know what the buff's on. It's interesting, and as part of confusing secrets, it might see play. I think if you ran Cloaked Huntress, then Hidden Cache could be an interesting one. You could certainly see a hunter running Cloaked Huntress along with like Freezing Trap and Cat Trick and Hidden Cache, that kind of thing. That might work. You know, you might have enough interesting, weird, fun secrets there that it actually makes it viable. This is a tough thing on the same way that Smuggler's Crate is a tough thing. It might not be worth the buff by itself, might not be worth the card, but the fact that it's a secret and your opponent might try and play around it does make it a little bit more interesting, especially as the player minion trigger only really affects Snipe at the moment, and most hunters don't run Snipe, so it gives another trigger that opponents have to consider. Trog Beast Rager. 2 mana 3/2. Give a random beast in your hand +1/+1 as a battle cry. This is good. It's a 2 mana 3/2. That's good enough. The problem is it's not a beast, so if you're playing beastie decks, then it's not going to synergize with that. It also doesn't work on Animal Companion. Worth noting that none of these cards work on Animal Companion, and in fact, that might be enough for Animal Companion not to see play, because it's not a beast, it's not even a creature while it's in your hand, so it can't be buffed by Grimy Goons mechanics. That Animal Companion is a very good card, and it might still be good enough to see play, but if anything is going to make it drop off, it might be not being able to be buffed by Grimy Goon mechanics. So, Trog Beast Rager is probably good enough. As long as there's enough playable beasts, which there probably are, you're not losing any stats on this, and you get a +1/+1 on something, that's pretty good. And in Arena, you can probably pick this. Even if you don't trigger it, it's fine, and if you get a few beasts around, then you're going to be super happy with it. Dispatch Kodo. 4 mana, 2/4, battle cry, deal damage equal to this minion's attack, and it's a beast. This is what we're talking about. Cards that hugely benefit from that Grime Street Hold mechanic, from being buffed up ahead of time. Even if you take this at its base level, this is a Keeper of the Grove. The old style Keeper of the Grove used to be the Druid card used to be a 4 mana, 2/4 that could deal 2 damage or silence a minion. This doesn't have the silence effect, but quite often you use the 2 damage and be very happy with it. 4 mana 2/4 deal 2 damage is good. It's pretty damn good. If you get buffed up at all, it's going to be even better. Imagine if Don Hancho hit this guy and you somehow got a 4 mana 7/9 and it dealt 7 damage to something. That's phenomenal. Now, Is that exactly the thing you want? Not necessarily, but it's good. And any way you buff this up is going to be really, really strong. Even just +1/+1, 4 mana, 3/5, deal 3 damage is fantastic. And a Dispatch Coder will certainly see play if you're running any kind of Grimy Goons deck, I think. And as will Rat Pack, 3 mana, 2/2, Death Rattle, summon a number of 1/1 rats equal to this minion's attack. Again, another beast. 3 mana, 2/2, summon 2/1/1s when it dies is good. It's, you know, you look at Haunted Creeper, that was a 2 mana 1/2 that summoned 2/1/1s, but the 1/1s weren't beasts. Presumably likely that these 1/1 rats will be beasts. But 3 mana 2/2 summon 2/1/1s is acceptable. If you buff it up at all, like a 3 mana 3/3 summon 3/1/1s, that's going to be nuts. If you Shaky Zip Gunner and then play Rat Pack, trade in your Shaky Zip Gunner, you've got a 4/4, trade it in, and then it dies and summons 4/1/1s. This is getting crazy. Rat Pack is such a good card. Same as Dispatch Coder. Both of these cards are, by themselves, kind of justifying the Grimy Goons being played in Hunter. And especially when you combine Shaky Zip Gunner into the mix, which is one of the more potent, straight up, buffing Grime Street hold style cards. Yeah, this Rat Pack is going to be a card that people are going to love and people are going to absolutely hate. So get used to seeing a lot of this card and its silly little hat. And Piranha Launcher, the 5 mana weapon, 2 attack, 4 durability. Whenever your hero attacks, summon a 1/1 Piranha. You get this lovely, adorable Piranha fella. This is okay because hunters do like to hit face with a weapon a lot. And, you know, you compare it to Assassin's Blade, which is a 5 mana 3/4. This is basically that because you're replacing one attack with a Piranha every time. And having a body is nice. The Piranha is a beast. That's a nice little benefit as well. So you're going to beast trigger much more easily. This is a weapon that could see play, but it could also just be terrible. Hunters like to whack face over and over again. This lets them continue to do that, so that's good. But also it's a 5 mana weapon. And a 2 attack 5 mana weapon. Hunters don't have a ton of ways to buff weapons or anything, so it may not actually see play, but you could see why a hunter might choose to use it, and you might find it one of those more frustrating weapons that just keeps pinging you down. You know, an aggro hunter that's smashing your face in, and then they play Piranha Launcher and they're just doing 4 damage a turn with this and their hero power, and you have to deal with their piranhas because if you don't, then they've got beast synergies in their hand. It could get annoying. I don't think it's a great card, but there's a chance it could get it really annoying. And finally, Knuckles, the Hunter Legendary, 5 mana, 3/7. After this attacks a minion, it also hits the enemy hero. You can't help but go face with the Hunter now. You cannot help but go face. It's smorking all day. This card is also going to be super good if you buff it up. If you Don Hancho this, and you've got a 5 mana, 8/12 that whacks minions. It's got 12 health, it doesn't care, and every time it whacks a minion and kills it, it's also doing 5 damage to your opponent's face. That's devastating. It also is a real shame if it gets taken out with hard removal, but you know, you can't work on that basis necessarily. It's also a beast. That makes it great for beast synergy stuff. This could be a really good card. If you can't buff it, then it's still okay, but not amazing. But as soon as you start buffing this, it's very, very good. And I think Knuckles will probably see play if Grimy Goons Hunter is a thing, which I think is a good chance it will be. So let's move on to the Paladin. So first up, Grimscale Chum, a 1 mana 2/1 Murloc. Battlecry, give a random Murloc in your hand +1/+1. This is weird because it's a Grime Street hold card, but it doesn't really work with the other Grimy Goons cards that the Paladin has, or that really anyone has. It does, however, work well with Murlocs. It doesn't work well for Grimy Goons because they don't have Murlocs, but in a Murloc deck, a 1 mana 2/1 Murloc that buffs another Murloc in your hand is a good card. So if you're running Paladin Murloc, you will want to use this card. If you're not running Paladin Murloc and you're just running Paladin, Grimy Goons, Grime Street hold stuff, you probably don't want to run this card. So that's fine, but bear that in mind. Smugglers, run 1 mana spell, give all minions in your hand +1/+1. Possibly a really good way to start ramping your Grimy Goons Paladin deck, because the problem with the Grime Street cards is that they're all understated when you play them initially, and then you make that back up. But if you start by buffing the cards, on turn 1 when perhaps you didn't have another play, then you drop your 2-drop, it's already got the stats made up for it. Your 3-drop's already got the stats made up for it before it's buffed by the 2-drop. Your 4-drop's already got the stats made up for it before it's buffed by the 3-drop, you know. So, hypothetically, this could be a really good card. It might also just be that it doesn't fit in and you don't have space for it, because you want to play it on turn 1. It's gonna, you know, if you play it later in the game, it's okay, but it's not necessarily worth the card and the 1 mana. It's a nice thing to do on turn 1 if you don't have anything to do on turn 1. Whether that'll be enough to justify a slot in the deck remains to be seen. 2 mana Grime Street Outfitter, 1/1 for 2 mana. Battle cry, give all minions in your hand +1/+1. So this is the Smuggler's run on a stick. It's on a very small stick, but bear in mind, if you've just played Smuggler's run, this is now a 2/2, and a 2 mana 2/2 that gives all minions in your hand +1/+1 is more viable. Even without the buff, it's still okay, but you're losing so much tempo on turn 2 that in constructed, certainly, you might just not be able to get that back. And in arena as well, if arena's still curving out and your opponent's curving out normally, you might lose too much tempo too early on and not be able to make that back up with your slightly buffed minions. So, Grime Street Outfitter is a tough one to judge. If you can get, I don't know, I was going to say if you can get enough cards in your hand early, but you're not going to be able to draw cards by turn 2. So, I'm unconvinced on Grime Street Outfitter, at least for now. Getaway Kodo, 1 mana secret. When a friendly minion dies, return it to your hand. This is interesting. I'm not convinced this is an amazing card. The thing is that there's some really good battle cries in this deck that maybe you'd want to get again, and for that, Getaway Coda could be okay. The thing with Paladin Secrets is that they're 1 mana, they're never that impactful. You know, you still have to pay full price for the minion. Your opponent is likely not going to kill anything, or they're going to kill a small thing first, because maybe you've got a redemption or something anyway, so they're probably working around that already. And the fact that this triggers off the same thing, you know, I think the problem now is that they're running out of secret triggers at some point, so they're having to overlap slightly. You can't play this, you can't really play this with Secret Paladin deck, because if you Christmas tree them all out with Mysterious Challenger and then they attack, the get down happens, you lose the 2/1, and the 2/1 gets returned to your hand, and you just get a 2/1 back in your hand. That's not that exciting. So, Getaway Coda is a tough card to justify, at least from what we've seen so far. Grime Street Enforcer, 5 mana, 4/4. At the end of your turn, give all minions in your hand +1/+1. So end of turn recurring buffs. 4/4 is very low stats for 5 mana. Well, not very low, but under what you would want. It buffs all minions in your hand, and it will do it the turn you play it. The problem is, because it's at the end of turn, you can't play this. Let's say it's turn 10. You can't play this and then play another buffed 5 mana card, or play this and play a buffed 3 mana and a buffed 2 mana card, because the buff doesn't happen until you end your turn. That said, this is a card the opponent has to deal with, because if this triggers a second time, it starts to get pretty insane on the value. But it does really need to trigger a second time, I think, because otherwise it's probably not going to give you enough for the initial investment of a 5 mana 4/4. Grime Street Protector though, 7 mana 6/6 taunt, battle cry, give adjacent minions divine shield. This is a potentially really exciting card. I love the art on this card as well. I love the dude with the the lawyer style dude, and then he's got his big protector with him. Big beefy guy. This is a really good card, and I think in Arena you'll certainly be looking out for this card. As long as Paladin can make it through towards the latter game, you drop this guy. If you've got a guy on board, this is amazing. Like, even if you haven't got a guy on board, a 7 mana 6/6 isn't terrible. If you've got anything on board, and you can always just play, even if you just play your hero power and get a 1/1, and then drop this guy and you get a 1/1 divine shield, and then you get a 7 mana 6/6 with taunt, that's pretty good. This isn't an insane card, although in Arena I think it's a very good card, but it's certainly a good card, and certainly one that we'll get to see some play. 1 mana Mean Street Marshal, 1/2, Death Rattle. If this minion has 2 or more attack, draw a card. This is a very cool card. If you buff this up with a Grime Street mechanic at all, then it's going to draw a card when it dies. A 1 mana 1/2 that draws a card is fantastic. I mean, Novice Engineer used to be a 2-mana 1/2 that drew a card, and that was too strong. They had to bring it down to a 2-mana 1/1 that drew a card. So a 1-mana 1/2 that draws a card is fantastic if you can get it to work. Even if you don't, it's not the worst. But also bear in mind, Paladin has lots of ways to buff minions on board. So you can play this on turn 1, then buff it on turn 2, hit it into something, draw a card. There's plenty of good options for Mean Street Marshal, and I think this is a card that's certainly got some potential. In Arena, it's not quite as good because you don't have as many reliable ways to buff it. But even so, a 1-mana 1/2 is acceptable, and the times when it draws a card, it's so a good all-around card. I love his look as well. I really love his look. Fantastic look. Small Time Recruits, 3 mana, draw 3 1-cost minions from your deck. Now, hypothetically, if you're using cards that are buffing, these cards that are buffing all the minions in your hand, then you're going to want to be playing a lot of small minions, drawing a lot of small minions, buffing them all, and they're just a little bit, and then playing them all out and getting loads of value from them. So, hypothetically, in a low-cost, minion spamming, Grime Street hold style Paladin deck, this could see some play. And it kind of does replace Divine Favour to some extent. The problem is 1-cost minions, even the low cost decks aren't just playing 1-cost minions. The 1-cost minions are strong for 1 mana. 1 mana minions are traditionally pretty good for the mana cost, but they are still the weakest cards in Hearthstone, you know. So getting 3 of them, and then you've got to play them. So if your turn 6 players draw 3 minions, 3 1-cost minions, and then play 3 1-cost minions, is that a great thing to be doing on turn 6? Probably not. I'm unconvinced this card will work. I see where they're going with it, but I think it might just not be impactful enough to draw 3 1-cost minions that late in the game. And finally, the legendary for Paladin, Wicker Flame Burn Bristle. What a good name. What great art here. This dwarven dude with flaming locks of hair and beard and some kind of massive cannon in his chest. 3 mana, 2/2, Divine Shield and Taunt. Damage dealt by this minion also heals your hero. This is a fantastic card that I think will absolutely see play. It's outstanding. Like, think about 2 mana, 2/2, Divine Shield that used to get played all the time and was a fantastic card. One of the best 2-drops. This is 1 mana more and it gets Taunt and it heals you. So it's going to heal you for 2 as a starting thing. But then factor in the Grime Street mechanics. If you've buffed on turn 1, let's say you play Smugglers run turn 1, Grime Street Outfitter turn 2, you get a 2/2 for 2 mana. Then on turn 3 you play this guy, he's a 4/4, Divine Shield and Taunt, and he's going to heal you for 4 on whatever he hits. And that's if he... And he's got Divine Shield, so bear in mind, he's almost certainly going to have to be hit twice. So unless they're casting spells, he's going to hit 2 things. He's healing you for 8. On turn 3, okay, on turn 3 you don't really need to be healed for 8. That's a bit of a weird example, but even so, they have to go through it. It's got Taunt, it's got Divine Shield. Even as a 2/2, I think this card is good, because if you're playing against aggro, you haven't buffed him at all, you play him, they hit it twice, you gain 4 health, you kill 2 of their minions. I don't think you can argue with that for 3 mana, let alone before you start buffing it. So, Wicker Flame Burn Bristle, definitely a card to look out for. Let's get on to the Warrior cards. Okay, so the first Warrior card, I Know a Guy. 1 mana, discover a Taunt minion. Fun card, fun flavour. Taunt minions are okay. In Arena, this is probably decent. In Constructed, there's a lot of bad Taunt minions out there, and while there's plenty of good ones as well, and there's a decent chance you'll find a good one out of your 3, I don't necessarily know that this sees play in Constructed. If a Taunt deck's a thing, you probably just put in all the good Taunt cards and that's enough. And, you know, just randomly fishing for a Taunt minion is maybe not worth your while. But, not a terrible card. It's pickable in Arena, certainly. For the reasons we've already discussed, Discover mechanics are okay in Arena as your entire deck is basically discovered anyway. Public Defender. 2 mana, 0/7 with Taunt. Now, we talked about 0/7s in the neutral discussion. The problem with a 0/7 is that, or not anything, is that it doesn't deal any damage on the board. However, 7 stats is a lot for 2 mana. Normally you'd expect 5 stats for 2 mana. Here, you get 7 stats and you get Taunt, which is worth probably like half a mana or so. that's looking quite good, actually. The problem is still, you know, hey, this is gonna just die without killing anything. But in the worst case scenario, it saves you 7 health. If you can buff it up at all, you know, even a little bit of buff, and bear in mind, Grime Street mechanics, if you buffed it up by 1 or 2, is suddenly this is a 1-8 or a 2-9 or a 3-10. If you can make this a 3-10, and bear in mind, we'll see a warrior card soon that might get that done, then this could actually be a good card. So don't write it off completely yet, because Public Defender might have a special spot. But as is, you've really got to use it carefully, because it might just not actually do anything. But potential. Definitely potential. Grimy Gadgeteer, 4 mana, 4/3. At the end of your turn, give a random minion in your hand +2/+2. So you're losing 1/1 in stats, basically, because you're losing 2 stats total. You'd expect 9 stats for your 4 mana. But you get +2/+2 on a random minion in your hand, and it's a recurring effect. So if they don't kill this thing, and it only has 3 health, but if they don't kill it, then that's a big deal. Another +2/+2 would be pretty nuts. So this is definitely a card that could see some play in the Grimy Goons style decks. Stolen Goods, 2 mana, give a random taunt minion in your hand +3/+3. So here we go. You play this. Let's say you coin this out turn 1. And then turn 2 you drop your Public Defender and it's a 3/10 with taunt. Oh boy. That's going to kill anything they put out for the first few turns. And anything and everything they put out for the first few turns. Other than that, 2 mana to give a random minion in your hand +3/+3 is not amazing. You can't target it on the thing you want. Warriors do have a lot of taunts that are potentially very good. Stuff like Bloodhoof Brave. You give that +3/+3, a 5/9 with the Enrage on it. That's a really deadly card. So it does have some really interesting use cases. But I think perhaps, again, I've said this with the Hunter, perhaps using a spell and not getting any minion is just, you're investing an extra card into this one single card. You're investing 2 cards into one, basically, into one final minion without any other benefit from it. And I think that's a little bit rough to ask. I think you're better off with something like the Grimy Gadgeteer, where yes, you only get +2/+2, but you also get a 4/3 minion for your cost and for your card. Grime Street Pawnbroker. Fantastic art on this one. Look at her go. Oh my gosh, what a cutie with the hair and the rocket launcher thing. 3 mana, 3/3, battle cry, give a random weapon in your hand +1/+1. Giving a weapon in your hand +1/+1 is very good. 3 mana, 3/3, you're only really losing 1 stat to do it. Let's just say you drop an Arcanite Reaper and you've got a 6/3 Arcanite Reaper. That's 18 damage to face. That kills 3 big minions from turn 5 onwards. Because your 6 attack will kill most things around the kind of turn 5 to 7 mark. You're going to be in pretty good stead. So Grime Street Pawnbroker, certainly a card that could see plenty of play, and certainly one you want to look to pick up in Arena, especially if you've drafted a few weapons. I mean, I guess if you drafted no weapons, maybe don't pick it, but that will almost never happen in Warrior Arena. 5 mana, Ally Armorsmith. 5 mana, taunt, 2/7. Whenever it deals damage, gain that much armor. So, as an anti-aggro card, this is pretty solid. Worst case scenario, if you're playing this against aggro, they probably have to hit it with 2 or 3 things, which means you'll get 4 to 6 armor out of it, and you'll effectively gain 7 health, and it will kill a couple of their minions, probably. That would be pretty good. As a general thing, 5 mana for a 2/7 taunt is not ideal stats. But if you can buff it up with your Grimy Gadgeteer or even with your Stolen Goods to a 5/10, whenever it deals damage, gain that much armor, suddenly that's very tempting. And that's where Stolen Goods maybe starts to shine a little bit more. Again, Warrior, lots of cards that are potentially very good if you buff them. But will that be worth investing multiple cards into? Only time will tell. Sleep with the Fishes. 2 mana spell, deal 3 damage to all damaged minions. This card is so exciting, and there's so many ways you can use this. You can Whirlwind and Sleep with the Fishes. Suddenly that's 4 damage to everything. Yes, it's 2 cards, 3 mana, and you Flame Strike. Yes, you hit your board as well, but if you're playing a control warrior, you might just not have anything on your side of the board. That may not matter. Any kind of whirlwind effect will obviously work with this. There's ways to just damage their side of the board. If you've got the new legendary Sergeant Sally, when she dies, deals her attack to everything on their side of the board. So, like, hypothetically, if you needed to, you play her, you inner rage her, deal 3 damage to everything on their side of the board, sleep with the fishes for another 3 damage to everything on their side of the board. That's pretty nutso. The only thing with this is it kind of counterintuitive, where the warrior normally wants to. The nice thing about Warrior Whirlwind is that a lot of your minions have stuff like Enrage or Card Draw when they get hit, and so you take advantage of the fact that your minions are also getting hit by the Whirlwind effects. Sleep with the Fishes doesn't work with that because it just kills everything on your side of the board as well. You can't play this in Patron Warrior, for example. Brass Knuckles. 4 mana, 2/3 weapon, 2 attack, 3 durability. After your hero attacks, give a random minion in your hand +1/+1. 2 attack weapon on turn 4 is probably not good enough. You do get the buffs, and that's nice. You're going to get +3/+3 worth of buffs out of this, but I just am not convinced that 3 2 attack strikes is worth your time on the 4 mana. The problem with it being on a weapon is that you want a weapon to kill the minion outright so that you don't have to swing him with anything else. And as a result, I'm not convinced that Brass Knuckles will cut the mustard on this example. And finally, the legendary Hobart's Grapple Hammer. 2 mana, 2/2, Battle Cry, give all weapons in your hand and deck +1 attack. I think this card becomes basically a staple of any kind of weapon-based warrior, because 2/2 is acceptable. You coin him out, then you play your Fiery War Axe. There's a 4/2 Fiery War Axe. You play the Grime Street Pawnbroker. You give your Arcanite Reaper +1/+1. It's now a 7/3 for 21 face damage. Hobart Grapple Hammer is just a really strong card. There's not much to actually be said about it, but I think it's a very good card that will see a ton of play in Warrior. And the only thing I'm kind of sad is I don't think it works on weapons that you currently have equipped, which is a shame because, as someone pointed out on Twitter, I think a weapon that you've got equipped is technically in your hand, so maybe they should be careful about how they word these things. But that's going to do it for the Grimy Goons. So I really like their mechanic. It was the first one that was revealed. I'm actually a little concerned it might be the weakest of the 3 because it's very buff heavy, and buffs traditionally in Hearthstone aren't as reliable because there's so many ways to board clear and remove stuff. And just in general in card games, trying to invest a lot into one minion is always a bit worrying. But it's got a ton of potential, and if you can get it rolling, you might just end up with enough value. It's kind of like the old Dragon Priest taken to the new level of, like, you're just getting above value on everything. Like, after you start getting it rolling, you're paying for less than you're getting every single turn because everything's getting buffed up. And if it works, it could be really good, but if it doesn't, then obviously it's going to be real rough for those 3 classes. But I think it'll be decent at least, and it's a fun mechanic to play around with. It's quite a high skill mechanic, and I think that's a good direction for Hearthstone to head in. So that's going to wrap it up for now. Next time we will be looking at the Jade Lotus. So thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you're as excited about the mean streets of Gadgetzan as I am, and that's going to do us. So until next time, I hope you have a fantastic day, and I'll catch you on the next one. Cheers!
Welcome to the big time, pal!
On the mean streets of Gadgetzan.
Now who's got the upper hand?